In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast with me, Mina Rizuki. And as always, I am joined by the sunshine, the lady who brings all the happiness, which is a nice, juxtaposition to all my negative clouds. It is Nikki Bandini.
She's such a liar. She's such a liar. I was talking about this with someone the other day, Mina.
Oh yeah,
and about the fact that I feel like we're sort of slightly yin and yang, funny pair because I'm much bigger than you, and also when we come in places, I always feel like you're super glam and you always look so well put together, and I come in like a bag of rags. But I feel like you just make me laugh so much all the time. So even though that might be the external appearance of it, actually I think you're every bit as much the sunshine and the laughter as well, because I'm always falling about when you're around.
No, hon, that's because we're both Leos. I believe so much in star signs. So I think that's I think we have just very big characters, so it's quite funny. But yeah, we do have a nice yin yang that I'm always eating when I come in. And you're always looking at me also, I'm actually older than Nikki, but I feel like Nikki takes care of me, so it's quite sweet like that. But yeah, that's who we are, and I hope you guys can enjoy listening to us. I'm starving and I've just stuffed myself with chocolate before the show started. And now I've run out and have to wait till the end of the show before I can actually get some real food.
This is the suffering we go through for you guys on Mondays. People don't realize we work really hard. Genuinely, I think both Mina and I have really busy Mondays. So we do quite often sort of rush to get this podcast, and it's oh God, no one stopped for lunch. Let's just go. But it's worth it. It's worth it to talk culture.
Yeah. And then Nikki's got to take a train tonight. She's got to take a train tonight to come all the way to where I am so that we could do another show tomorrow.
Sky Sports in the UK, yeah, we've not even mentioned it on here, really, have we? We do Sky Sports News every Tuesday at the moment.
Yeah, and maybe we might just be a more permanent fixture in days to come. We'll see. Everyone seems to love the yin and yang. But anyway, it's been a really exciting week because Nikki's interviewed Stefano Pioli. We've had an amazing week of get well. actually it wasn't an amazing weekend of games, because let's start off with the big match that was supposed to blow us all out the water. And I thought, how exciting. Yay. We're going to see what, Juventus are like. They're going to take on Milan at San Siro. It's going to be a fun game to watch. And maybe, just maybe, Stefano Pioli, after 18 tries, can actually beat Massimiliano Allegri. And it was really dull. But some people think, it was a nice tactical battle. I get that. But for me, I was like, yeah, I'm over this.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I was sort of looking for this game and I was thinking, well, Pioli hasn't beaten Allegri in 18 meetings, but Juventus haven't beaten any of the teams above them in the table so far this season, right? Like they hadn't beaten Atalanta, Inter, Napoli, or Milan in 5 games, I think, so far this season. And so like in my head, it was like something has to give this weekend, except it didn't. It turned out it didn't. Like nothing had to give. Nothing had to happen at all for 90 minutes. We just sat there and waited for anything to happen. And mostly it didn't. It was a really disappointing game. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about Pioli in a bit. Like I had a really fascinating conversation with him and I really, really enjoyed him. So it was such a contrast between, real sort of a sense of an individual and then this sort of realization that it doesn't matter here as an individual. Like you don't get to, I say it's like a realization, like I didn't know that this is how the world works, but you know where I'm coming from. Like, that even a good manager who's up against another good manager, by the way, like can't magic a football game to their will. And I think Juventus got more what they wanted from this game. I think Max Allegri came to the game with a strategy that has been serving him pretty well recently, which is safety first, make sure that everything is very tight at the back, even if you've got Daniele Rugani back there, who, by the way, had a great game.
Yeah, I know. How upsetting. Yeah. I've been so mean about the guy. But no, credit, yeah. And
that was the plan, and it worked. Juventus have kept, I can't think how many it is now, they've kept something like 8 clean sheets in 12 games, I think it is. Like they're keeping clean sheets. And sometimes that is able to be combined with a bit more attacking ambition than what they showed here, because here there was a real lack of it. But I don't know. I think for me, what is going to be like my lasting feeling about this game is, Mina, like it's the second half of the season now. So we're not at the business end quite yet, but we're getting towards it, right? And it's second against fifth, and both teams like coming into it's like quite big moments. Milan need to keep up with Inter top. Juventus need to make that push on and get into the top 4. And it's at San Siro, and it should be like one of those great Sunday nights in the season that you just relish. And instead, you've got San Siro with 5,000 fans in because of the COVID regulations that are there in Italy right now at the moment, which takes away a huge part of the atmosphere. You've got a potato field of a pitch where they've played 6 games in 12 days, which was just a hideous pitch. They literally played a game the day before Inter played there. And then you get a game of football that for me was, I don't know, it just wasn't the spectacle that I was hoping it would be, I suppose.
You're right. I think that there is a lot to talk about this from Milan's point of view and their home form. And I do think that it was a terrible pitch. It was going to harm them a lot more because they are a team that relies a lot on fluidity and beautiful passing. Let's say a lot more than Juventus do, at least. But in their last 7 home matches, they've only won twice. So it's almost like, do you remember we talked a lot about this last season? We noticed that Milan was so good away from home, and they sort of rectified this issue at the start of the season. And then now it's like almost going back to the average of them being poor again at San Siro. So I don't know what's going on there. Like you said, it could be that there's obviously an issue with the pitch that they're going to make sure they work on and have it nice and beautiful for the big derby when we come back from the international break. There's obviously things to look into there in the sense that Zlatan hasn't scored since September. It was taken off 28 minutes later. Still sort of the guy they depend on. This is the thing with Milan. I feel like they are such a good team, but sometimes when the stakes are high and you need to level up, I don't know if they quite manage it in the same way that sort of other teams do. Like Juventus are pretty hideous and they haven't beaten anyone in the top, but they do try to level up. It's just that they don't have enough. They will try to win against Chelsea or something like that. But Milan, with everything that they have and the beauty of their game and their strategy and tactical identity, I am disappointed with some of their performances in the Champions League. I'm disappointed with some of their performances in the league and, in front of their own fans. But, this is a young squad and they don't have the type of individuals perhaps others can rely on. But I'm more interested in talking, obviously, because in this sense, I'm going to do something that I rarely do because I am the president of Max Allegri's fan club. Or if I'm not, I should definitely be appointed one. Yeah. You know how much I value this human being as everything. I think he is such an intelligent man, more than I think that he's a great coach. He's wonderful. And the way that he talks really pulls you in, and he's so charismatic when it comes to like talking about football. I was very happy with him coming back, and I've been somewhat happy with the way that he is trying to deal with this, this whole risk averse. I get it. But now I just feel like it's getting a little bit tedious because there is obviously a problem. Dybala is playing as a centre back in order to try to get the ball to produce. Yeah, like, as in at this point, I don't know how far. Yeah, it's like one of those, where like, if you guys watch Friends and there's an episode where they play like American football and they're like, go long to Rachel.
Oh, God,
I feel like or Phoebe. So just
I think it's Phoebe. I can't remember sometimes. That's all right.
Or is it and then,
it might be Rachel. It might be Rachel. You might be right. Yeah, I can't remember.
He's pretty bad at it. And I just feel like Dybala's going long because no one can get the ball up the field for Paul Morata or for anyone in the air. You've got McKennie trying to make runs. Honey, there's no ball. So what are you making runs for? Yeah. So it's like Dybala's going all the way back to try to get the ball up the field. Yeah. And you just think to yourself, there's obviously a tactical mismatch because Morata's just simply never going to be like a Lukaku or that kind of figure that can play on his own and hold up the defense. He's the kind who presses from the front. He's a lot about mobility. You know that. You've spoken about that. This is what you love about Morata. You can't just stick him up there and hope he's going to do something. He's not that kind of striker. So you need the ball. And once again, you bring on Arthur, but you take off Locatelli. Like, if you don't have the midfield possessing the ball, then all these players become unable to produce a shot on goal. Since 2019, Juventus haven't gone through a game without producing a single shot on target. And they've got Dybala, and they've got Morata, and they've got raiders from midfield, like they like to call them, and you bring on Kulusevski. It's bizarre. And you're not up against like Tomori and Kayet, right? So it comes to a time where Allegri joked, oh, well, if you want goals, then bring in Landucci. Well, yeah, maybe we should at this point, because Landucci got us 4 goals against Sampdoria. Landucci got us the comeback win against Roma. I'm not saying to you that he's obviously the man, but maybe try to possess the ball and allow for like Arthur was very good when he came on. Maybe he would have been even better with Locatelli. And Locatelli, when you watch him against Tonali and you see how far below he is, and it's almost like having a Ronaldo in midfield, not quite, because he's not of that level, obviously, but telling him you can only express this much of your potential, which is 30%. Why not? You have Locatelli, one of the best midfielders of the Italian national team. Like, use him to his advantage. Bring him in with somebody that can also direct the game. I don't want to take away, because I think McKennie's been brilliant. I thought Bentancur was very good in this match, but I do feel like tactically Allegri is not doing enough to unbutton and unleash a forward line. And he's actually making it very, very stale. Now, the other issue I have with this, and I'm sorry, I'm talking for a long time, is just on a psychological level, Allegri is acting as if like, okay, well, we have to be so humble. And I get that, right? Because you don't want to be in a place of superiority where you feel like you're running away with it. Yeah. The way, anyway, I won't mention them because they're Napoli. But anyway, like, let's work hard. Let's keep working hard.
One fight at a time. One fight at a time.
Yeah, one fight at a time. But I do think by him always accepting sort of, oh, well, it's Milan. So, it's good we've kept them only 7 points away. And all of these matches of not winning against the big guys, of not actually like pushing the team to outscore Milan, to do more than they can. On a psychological level, I was very angry when Antonio Conte once said in the Champions League, it's between us and Galatasaray for second place. And I said, I don't like a coach like that to be in charge of Juve. I don't want a coach like Allegri who thinks it's okay to be, subpar and to accept Milan's dominance. You are the coach of Juventus, so you are never not with a team that has the salary or the players or the staff or the directors that you guys have, should you ever accept a 0-0 or even a draw with anyone that you face, including Chelsea. And the fact that you're talking with such a, well, what can we do? This is starting to bother me, because on a psychological level, you are giving your players an excuse to be mediocre, because you are not being just mediocre. You are allowing for the mediocrity to consume you. And that, for me, I'm very angry with Allegri right now. Over to you.
Oh God, there's a lot to come. There's a lot to respond to. It's funny you're talking about. There's so many things in my head right now. You talking about liking Allegri. It is the most ridiculous story I'm going to share with you. But when I interviewed him one time at a Juventus training base, I don't know why this is like stayed in my head as like a nice act of politeness. But like in Italian, the word for discourage is extremely similar to the word for fart. It's scoraggiato instead of scorreggiato. And I was interviewing him and I tripped up over those two words and talked about about him farting instead of him feeling discouraged. And his laugh, but also like the sort of like smoothness with which he didn't make me feel awkward about it, I always appreciated. That's my personal Allegri anecdote for everybody. Scorreggiato, it's very similar to scoraggiato. They're very similar words.
They really are.
I'm with you though, Mina. I really thought that like there were some extraordinary things set after this game, as they're sort of now. I think I'm obsessed with press conferences in Italy. They always seem to be more entertaining than the ones anywhere else. I thought it was interesting because, of course, Pioli was asked about, glass half full, glass half empty. And he said, glass half empty, but not for this game. He said, actually, glass half empty really because of the Spezia game. And again, he's tried to be really magnanimous. That's something that we talked about in the interview, that like is that human error, things happen. But like you could see that the 3 points drop there really eating at him. Whereas he was saying, look, it's in the end, the draw with the Juventus is fine. What hurts is the loss to Spezia. But Allegri said, my glass is completely full. And then said what you were just alluding to, like this extraordinary comment about keeping the gap to Milan at 7 points. And look, the newspapers picked up on this. So it's not an original thought from me, but the idea that a Juventus manager should be talking about a 7-point gap to Milan, maintaining it being good in your head, like that should be like Juventus, like recent Juventus, that's when Juventus is 7 points ahead of Milan, right? Like maintaining the gap is what you say when you're ahead of them. When you're behind a team, saying, oh, it's good, we've kept that 7-point gap. When also, by the way, Italy uses head-to-head results to decide tiebreakers. So it's not just 7 points now. They've lost the tiebreaker to Milan if they end up on 11 points because of away goals get used in it as well. So it's all these little sort of things that feel like an ambition. Having said that, Mina, to sort of just to frame it from the other side for a second, this season started really, really badly, really badly. So I think there's two ways that you can look at what's happening right now. One is, am I comparing it to Pirlo last season? If I'm comparing it to Pirlo last season, is there really the progress in the big picture we expected? I don't know. You can have that conversation for me. But if you're comparing where Juventus are now to the start of the season, it's better, isn't it? It's better. They're not losing games. Then is it 9 games unbeaten? As I said before, they've got the 8 clean sheets in 12 games. Is this what you had to do?
In the first 10 games, they conceded 13 goals. In the last 11, they've conceded 6. So we know that on a defensive level,
half of those are against Roma. Like take out the Roma game, it looks even. Yeah,
that's so true. And also, can I just say on a matter of defense, do you not think, like when you have a star player, like, I don't know, like Fabio Cannavaro, like when you have that guy, it's like whoever you stick next to him just works. He just becomes like the world's greatest defender. Chiellini's that guy. Like he makes Bonucci the best version of Bonucci, And yesterday with Rugani, I'm like, what just happened? like Rugani's like,
he was
wow.
good. He had a good game.
Yeah, he was really good. The guy was shutting things down. He was anticipating. His speed of thought was faster than I usually remember it to be. So I was like, Chiellini is that guy. It's interesting. And he plays with such, it's true, like the enthusiasm of a kid. But listen, I honestly do. It is better. Obviously, it's better. At least defensively, there's more rhythm and all of this. But for me, I don't know whether he's just trying to lock down his little, because he's a perfectionist in the whole team's scheme. And so I don't know whether he's just trying to make sure Locatelli understands this or Cuadrado understands this before then I can bring on the Arthur and keep them all there. I remember Inzaghi had, because he wanted to play all his best players and he was trying to figure out a way of making it balanced without losing like their defensive solidity. And it took a while until he finally had the courage to play everyone together. But I just feel like it's taking too long. And right now it's starting to harm Juventus more. It's not like Arthur and Locatelli are the answer and all of a sudden Juventus are going to win the Scudetto. I'm just saying, like, there's not enough experimentation anymore. It's almost like we're just going to have to deal with this. And it's just getting worse on an attacking level. I mean, we know Juve can't score more than one goal unless they are under Landucci. But now it's a case of, like, in these big matches, they're not even managing shots on target or really anything of note. And I feel like, for me, like Dybala, I don't, firstly, I get why he goes back to try to get the ball, but it's also like, this is pretty terrible. Like, you are a guy who wants 10 million, but I don't get any excitement for you. All I'm sitting there is praying that Chiesa comes back quicker than 6 months. Because for me, when I see Chiesa on the sideline about to come in, I get excited. Do you get excited when Dybala's on the sideline about to come in?
Well, I mean, not for a performance like this. And it begs the question, a performance like this, whose decision is it that he's back as much as he was? Because he was back a lot. Like, I mean, we joked about it, like, you know, half playing in defense, he's back the whole time. And it's funny, actually, because when we were talking about Rugani, we're back to my favorite post-game remarks again. But the thing he said after the game, where he got asked, Rugani, about, you know, Allegri had said some nice things about him, basically saying, oh, he'd done really well with like his timing and his positioning. And you sort of expect him to sort of say something nice back about Allegri, which actually he did afterwards. But his first response was like, oh, yeah, you know, I've got some great stuff from different coaches in my career, especially Maurizio Sarri, he sort of says. You think, oh, God. And then when you said about Dybala, I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, Dybala looked pretty good under Maurizio Sarri. So, I mean, I'm not thinking that anyone in Turin is harking for the days of a Sarri ball, but it's funny how we're talking about two players here who actually maybe did, you know, find some of their better attributes drawn out by a different manager. And the thing with Sarri and Dybala was always just like kicking him up the bum and saying, stay closer to goal, stay closer to goal. And whether or not that isn't something Allegri can do because of the tactics and the way he's approaching games, I'm not sure, but certainly that's something that has changed.
Well, yeah, if you want him to stay closer to goal, then you need to get the ball up there. And the only way you're going to get the ball up there is by playing two ball players in Arthur and Locatelli. That was the whole point. Otherwise, you just do find that it's sort of, you know, McKennie's not going to be the guy, or Rabiot, who's going to, like, you know, manipulate the ball and dribble or any of these things. Or at least Bernardeschi helps out a little bit on that. Not that he's the world's greatest either, but there is a level of, I feel sorry for Dybala because he does want the ball. But at the same time, I just think that you do this regardless of what the tactics are. You did this under Pirlo as well. Like, you love to play as a centre-back. Not the way that Mandzukic does, because Mandzukic likes to be a defensive player. But with Dybala, it is, yeah, it's annoying. But I guess it's also, I mean, we need to analyze it from Milan's point of view. Like, what is it that you think with San Siro? Like, I just don't get why their performances at home never match up to what they can produce away from it.
Yes, there's a few things here. I think one of the things that clearly, you know, you can't get away from in this game is that it is impacted by Zlatan Ibrahimovic getting injured after 28 minutes, and we haven't mentioned him yet. It's funny. I sort of actually have that in my head on the list of, along with the, you know, the not having the fans there and the potato pitch, like things that you sort of expected from this game that didn't happen, right? Because Ibrahimovic was sort of talking, or at least had been talking not long ago, about how the big duels, the games against someone like Chiellini are the ones that keep him going. That's like what excites him. That's what makes football such a joy for him still. And that was a duel we were looking forward to. And who knows? I mean, I think that when I was sort of going back through the game afterwards, trying to sort of think, you know, what were the closest things we had to sort of goal scoring chance in this game? Because it felt like even that was a bit of a reach. And I think there were, in the second half, a couple of times when Theo Hernandez made those sort of big runs through that created a little bit of danger. There was the one nice cross for Solomakers that Giroud headed straight at Szczesny. And other than that, the main one is in the first half when Ibrahimovic does really excellent work with just a single touch. There's the pivot between Macias and Leao gets a shot off from the edge of the area that I think was probably the toughest save that Szczesny had to make, even though it was only a sort of a half chance for Leao in amongst a lot of defenders. So look, there's an impact of losing a forward like Ibrahimovic. Also, we can sort of turn that around and say, should you be relying on a 40-year-old who's been injured a lot? Obviously not. I certainly think that between the two teams, Milan were the team that showed more ambition, that created more goal-scoring chances. I think we can be fair to Milan and say that this is a team that was missing effectively a whole spine because it was without Kia and Tomori, and then in midfield, no Kessié and Benacer coming on off the bench and sort of being just back from the Cup of Nations. So there's mitigating circumstances, right? So I can give you all of these reasons as mitigating circumstances for Milan. But the bigger point that you're making about performances at home, I think it's hard to pin down some of it. I think that the pitch is a factor, but it's, the pitch is the same for both teams. I thought it was interesting the way Pioli talked about that after the game, because he said it's not an alibi. But at the same time, in the same breath, he said, but sometimes a pitch like this means that you have to take an extra touch, have to take an extra pass. And I thought, for the way that Milan play, I think best when Milan are playing their best football, I think it is when they're playing at speed. It is when they sort of go a little bit breakneck, when Leao is given that sort of head of steam running at people, when Teo Hernandez is running at people with a head of steam, and Macias and whoever else ends up behind the attack as well. So I think maybe there is something in another pitch would suit them better. In the end, I think you probably can point a little bit of the same thing at both teams, though, which is Ibrahimovic scores a lot of goals and is a good player and a valuable player still for them at that age. But certainly if you take him out, and even when he's there, do Milan still need someone at the top end of the pitch who's just a bit of like a ruthless goal scorer? Juventus clearly do. That's a conversation I'm sure we'll have about Vlahovic. And certainly for me, having sort of thought more positively about it at the beginning, I am less and less convinced that Giroud, when he's on the pitch for Milan, is contributing enough to that attack. I think when he's in there, there's not enough gain from having him there. I mean, he's there to do what he did on that one Solomakers cross, which is be a good target for headers. And he's not getting enough of those or converting enough of those to me to justify it. So I don't know what is the sort of secret sauce, but I feel like the number 9 position, certainly when Ibra's not there, is still not quite good enough.
Resolved. I mean, it's been a problem for a while. And listen, we know that Milan, especially at the start of the season, in so many matches now for 2 years, have really performed beautifully. And when they are at full flow and without dealing with absences and all the madness of it, they are beautiful to watch. But it's almost like because of the players that they go for, which are your, Brahim Diaz, your Salmakers, your Castilleros, Macias, they're good players. But perhaps on an individual level, they don't have the star quality that, Brozovic, for example, Lautaro Martinez, those kind of, like, when you compare them to sort of better teams, right? You look at that star quality and sometimes if the players are not super shiny and well rested, there is a drop. Like Leao is so good, but he's not consistent enough, and he's building and progressing, but it's not come as of yet. There isn't a player that I look at and I think to myself, I can guarantee a certain level of performances all the time, or that they can score goals, not Rebic, not anyone. And I wonder whether their transfer market will sort of always keep them fighting, but never enough to go over the line. Does that make sense? So is it time to maybe invest in like a big player up front who isn't 12 or 30 or 9, somewhere just, like a nice age? I know it's going to be very expensive, not necessarily like a Lukaku level. It doesn't have to be like a super expensive player, but somewhere that you can just get a little bit more, because Giroud, Ibrahimovic, it's the very older of the spectrum, right? And you don't want a very young one either. So somewhere like, I don't know, someone at their peak, right? Like
what I'm hearing is Mina bringing another candidate into the Vlahovic conversation. That's what we need.
But they could really do with Vlahovic. I mean, they'd win.
Mina and I have been talking a lot about Vlahovic this month because Sky want to hear about him a lot.
They'd win the Scudetto with Vlahovic, let's be honest. Come on.
Maybe. I think it would be a fascinating fit for sure. For sure. I can't see that happening. Actually, it's funnily enough, one of the things that I chatted to Pioli about a little bit in the interview that didn't make it into the copy for the Guardian website or the Observer, because limited word counts and there's always more and more you get to say. He was actually really chatty and really fun interview. But we talked about the sort of the realities of Italian clubs and how they sort of exist and fight in this era when the Premier League is richer and richer. And, you know, he said, because I was asking him how much it sort of weighs on him as a manager, the possibility that this young group that he's got, that people will start getting taken away from him. And there's been a lot of talk about Kessié recently and whether or not that he's got some Premier League suitors. And he said, you can't think about that stuff. You can't worry about it. You just get on with your job as a coach of managing day to day. And we got onto the topic of, is it realistic for Italian clubs to sort of aspire to compete with Premier League clubs and in European competition when there is such a big difference financially between them? And he's quite sort of bullish on that. You know, he's very much in a camp of, if you run your club well and you build a group of young players who are all on the same page and part of something that's like a coherent project, that you can do it. But it is very much a vision, I think, in his head of you need to sort of get the players in young and work this sort of project together while you get that big buy-in and that sort of big collective sense of drive towards something. And yeah, I think it's an interesting reflection perhaps on him as an individual as well, because he does have this reputation. And we've talked about it before, Mina, when we've talked about Pioli. He's a bit of a dad, isn't he? Like he's a bit of a sort of Serie A dad who brings people in and says the right things in their ear and gets the most out of them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like Atalanta don't have a huge transfer budget, and they've obviously, you know, like gone all in on players who believe in the project. And Gasperini is a great teacher, much like Pioli in a different way, obviously. But, you know, he does have a Duvan Zapata. He does have, he did have an Ilicic before. And your favorite player, I forgot his name. Can you believe it?
Hamburg Gomez.
Yeah, thank you. But, star quality that makes the difference in the big stages. And like Ibra makes the difference in the big stages. And, I'd just be nice if they had someone like a Duvan Zapata. Maybe you're right, Giroud wasn't the right purchase, But I sort of just feel like just that one guy could push them over the edge, because I don't see many. I mean, they do get a lot from Rebic and Leao, don't get me wrong. It's just not enough sometimes for Champions League or against teams like Juventus or those who shut up shop. That's all.
Yeah. I think Rebic would have been a better bet than Giroud in this game personally. But actually, funnily enough, I don't know, this came into my head as I finished that last thought. I remember before the interview, I was doing my research to find out, because I had this feeling that a lot of players had said, oh, Pioli's like a dad to me, like a father. And on the players who have definitely said that about him is, drumroll, Dusan Vlahovic. So maybe we're not so far off the mark there, Mina. Maybe Vlahovic will want to go be reunited with his football father. Who knows?
Okay, guys, you know that Nicky's an Arsenal fan and she's trying to take Vlahovic away from me, yeah? Now she's trying to take him away from me for Milan too. Stop it! Yeah, please. We are like, come on, we're dying. We're not even making top 4. Give me Vlahovic.
Oh, God, so are Arsenal, but that's a whole different conversation.
Okay, guys, this is the part of the show where we say hello and a shout out to our new Chronicles Tifosi patrons. Thank you so much for joining Patreon and listening to our exclusive content. We hope you will enjoy it. We've just started, so watch out for all the exclusive things we hope to bring to you to make this all a great experience. So let's thank a few of the names that have recently joined us. Ben McLeod, Aniruddha Nagarajan, I hope I said that right. Paul T. Allen, Michael Burtz, Daniel Rodriguez, Ziad Dalal,
Darren Potts, Jared,
like Jill,
Morgan Dirodi, Steve Jarvis, Richard Bold, Misak Ulikiak, Ben Woodham, who said, love your podcast so far, and I'm super excited you've launched Patreon. The content you've got already is pretty cool. Ben, thank you so much. Mina and I did a little mini episode each this week. Me talking about my interview with Pioli, Mina talking about Dusan Vlahovic. We're definitely going to be bringing you some more of that sort of content, where we just have our chance to have our soundslingers in our heads at that time. I hope you guys enjoy that. If you're one of the Patreons, let us know if there's things you want to hear more from us, because we're doing it for you guys, aren't we? So do let us know. For everyone else, do join our Patreon if you're so inclined, and that's something you want to do at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles, or go to our website at serieachronicles.com and click on the link that will take you right there.
Yes. Also, Jared and Jill, I feel like you two should get together. like Madonna,
they can make
and
a surname
Cher
together. They can pick a surname and start fresh.
This is what I mean, right? It's like, Madonna and Cher, like they defined my childhood, And it's like now we have Jared and Jill, and they both start with a J, so it would be like a JJ. Anyway, I've gotten way too excited about this. Let's move on and chat about football. Okay, so we've discussed Milan Juve. I think it's now time to discuss Inter Venezia, which was an interesting match because we know that Inter is far and away the best team in Serie A. We know that Venezia has been having problems, and that they've talked about the fact that having a team dressing room with so many different cultures and different people there, it becomes much harder sometimes to get your ideas and the interpretation of the tactics for that to be taken on board. And Venezia haven't been doing too well, but Zanetti managed to really shock them. And Inter dominated possession, 72%. But finally, Dzeko gets the goal. He hasn't scored since the 4th of December, but he manages to get the winner in this match in the 90th minute to secure all 3 points and break the hearts of all of Venezia. But lots of things to talk about, because Inter were a little bit scared in this match. Inter still dominated in this match. And is Inzaghi now the man when it comes to substitutions?
I just think it's really sort of in my head. This one is like a representation, I suppose, of the fine margins that can happen in a Serie A season. When you think about on Monday, Milan with that game that they should have won against Spezia. I mean, again, sort of Pioli sort of wanted to not make an excuse of it, but as the outsider, I'll make it for them that Milan, in effect, won that game against Spezia, right? Like they scored a goal in injury time that should have stood, and they would have won 2-1. Instead, it gets disallowed and they end up losing 2-1. And then a week later, you have Inter, who I'm not taking anything away from Inter because I think they are the best team in Serie A this season, but they find themselves in a very similar position. It's 1-1 at the end of a game against a team you expect them to beat at home. And the difference is they do find the winner. And I think it's sort of at the end of the season, we write the big overarching narrative and talk about the big picture. And sometimes we miss how such fine margins can change everything in a season. But look, I think it was an overdue goal for Edin Dzeko because he's playing more than well enough. I think even in this game before the goal, he was doing what he does so well for them. Yeah, I think he does the work as a pivot. I think he does the work as a pivot for them. And I think without him, their attack looks far less functional to me. I think if anything, it wasn't Lautaro's greatest game.
No.
But I thought Dzeko was doing his job. For the most part, it's funnily enough, he doesn't score as many headers as I think he should for someone who I consider to be quite good in the air, certainly good at winning the ball in the air. But they showed resilience, right? And it was not a totally easy position. It was a really nice headed goal from Henry that put Venezia ahead, and they dug it out at the end. And I think when you sort of keep in mind that Inter were playing in the Cup in midweek, they had an extra time game in the Cup in midweek, so they have got that little bit of extra heaviness in their legs. There are games that you get to win emphatically, and there are games where it's just, let's just get the points and get through it. And I think the fact that they got the points and got through it is kind of the only bit that really matters for me with them in this game. It wasn't their best performance, but it didn't matter. They got the 3 points.
Yeah, it's interesting because, when we were talking about sort of before, and you said choose your arguments because I was about to go off on one, but it was about like being humble and always working really hard. And I think that's good, but sometimes I mean, there's two sides to every story. Sometimes you need a little bit of arrogance, and Inter maybe were a little bit arrogant in this match in the sense that, they allowed Venezia to basically score the goal. And in their quest to try to sign it, they weren't as attentive to the defensive part of the game as they usually are. And they haven't been that attentive in the last few matches either. And I could say the same for Napoli against Salernitana. Sometimes you look at your opposition and think, what are they really going to do, right? But what I thought was interesting was how Venezia basically locked it down. On a tactical level, they were like, we are just going to shut up shop, and it's up to you to find the ability to pierce through this strong defense. And all of this, I think, is great for Inzaghi because they struggled. And I think that you just saw them sort of circulating the ball left and right, not really knowing, going really wide, trying to find a way through, but they did struggle. And I think it's good to have these lessons. Like I said before, what they have is a horrible February, right? They face some really big matches, the Derby, Liverpool, Napoli. So there's a lot going on there. And so it's good to face these teams and see what the problems are and try to rectify them. How can we be more unpredictable? How do we pick the lock? Because they do have players who are good on the ball, great players off the ball, the squad depth that you can change Darmian for Dumfries to deliver that beautiful crossing for Dzeko to make to take advantage of. And that is one reason why I think Inzaghi is very good in the substitutions, is because he's allowed to be very good at the substitutions for Inter have as well. But he has gotten a lot better than what he started off with. But there is that ability where they have to be careful about sometimes dominating possession, taking themselves like, oh God, we have to force it through. And then obviously taking your eye off the game and then allowing the other team to come back and shoot a goal and actually, surprise you on that level. But I don't know, like there are some, it's interesting with Inter. I don't know whether playing every 3 days is sort of taken the shine out. And before I want to focus on that, it just worries me because I'm scared that when they have all of this stuff coming up for them in February, whether it's going to start to dull their shine. And because I was really excited about their performances, and now you've seen them play every 3 days, with Coppa Italia and stuff, and you could see that there are some defensive mistakes that are happening. They're not all glowing in every single level. I think Barella was very good in this match, but Perisic, Lautaro Martinez, I didn't think Dzeko was that good, personally speaking. But I do wonder about, how that's going to go. But what I do love more than anything is that this is firmly an Inzaghi team now. I mean, it was a hybrid in the start, and slowly Inzaghi started taking over. But there's one thing I remember about when we first went into COVID and went into lockdown. And just before that, we were talking about Lazio and all their last minute goals, right? And Lazio were like challenging for the Scudetto. They were really good that season. And then they died after they came back from lockdown. And it was all about these, and then the Caicedo coming in, who's obviously being linked to Inter now. And just, these last minute goals that they kept getting. It was like, that was so thrilling about Lazio. It was like 0-0 or 1-1, and then they'd find the winner in the last minute. And that is what's happening to now. And now it's the Super Coppa with Alexis Sanchez. It's the equalizer from Ranocchia against Empoli. And now it's Dzeko winning all 3 points against Venezia. So I feel like this is so like the home of Inzaghi, last minute goals,
Yeah, I feel like there's a name that you missed off that list that I'm surprised you didn't mention in terms of the less sort of obvious names who've had something to do recently, because of course Stefano Sensi, I was always your favourite, scored against Empoli in the Coppa as well, and has been sort of an interesting sort of case actually, because he wants to go, he wants to move and play basically. He feels like it's become, partly because of just the injury misfortune he's had, too much of an uphill struggle to get the playing time he wants right now. But Inter are hesitant to let him go just for the time being because partly because Correa is injured, and also I think there's this sort of ongoing uncertainty about what the terms of Barella's European ban is going to be and whether or not they're going to need Sensi against Liverpool. But it's funny you talk about timing, Mina, because I I'm obsessed with this idea. I always talk about it, that in the Champions League, timing is everything. And the form you're in at different times of the year is what actually matters more than whether or not you're the best team in Europe. And funnily enough, maybe this is one of those old knee-jerk reactions of mine. But to me, I was looking this week and thinking, gosh, who's the better football team between Inter and Juventus? No question. Inter are a better football team than Juventus right now. Which of those teams do I think might have its European head screwed on right come February? Not as clear cut to me. I think if Juventus become this frustrating team that won't concede a goal, that you can get through knockout ties by not conceding a goal. Whereas Inter, to me, are a step below they've been at their best right now. And they've got a few more weeks to sort that out, but it's not that much time now until they go and play Liverpool, who it's a tall order. It's a tough tie. So I hope we'll see the best Inter in those games. Obviously, this sort of mini break now is going to be very, very welcome with the international break, but without them playing games. So players will go away and train with the international sides, but they won't actually play matches. It's definitely a big moment coming up in the season, though, for Inter, because for sure we want to see them give their best against Liverpool and show how good they can be. And I'm not sure we've seen them at that level for a few weeks now.
So are you worried? Do you think they can? I mean, what do you think genuinely? I mean, we know that Liverpool obviously are favourites and they're one of the best
Liverpool
teams in Europe.
Favourites.
Yeah, I mean, and they're best team in Europe, let alone just England, one of the best teams in Europe by far. Do you think Inter can challenge them?
I think if Inter play their best game, they're capable of hanging with Liverpool. Yeah, Liverpool are favourites for a reason. I think they're a better team at a different stage of their development. Liverpool have been working and improving under Jurgen Klopp for longer, and they have far greater financial resources that have been put into that project. So it's not surprising that they're the favourites. They should be the favourites. But I think that the best football Inter have played this season is a level of football that can hang with, I think, most teams in Europe. I mean, certainly, although the results didn't go their way, I thought they played two excellent games against Real Madrid in terms of the quality of their performance. I think if you get that Inter against Liverpool, then we have a real tie. I think that's other than Barella getting himself in trouble. Well, partly because Barella's an idiot, which, he's a brilliant footballer, but he was an idiot against Madrid. Yeah, you need that, and you need the difference with those Real Madrid games. I mean, especially the first game against Real Madrid, meaning the only reason they lost that game is because they didn't convert one of a million chances. And so, yes, you need that performance, and you also need Lautaro and Dzeko to do the business.
Anyway, let's move on to... Oh, actually, I'm interested to know what you thought of this match, because everyone talked about it, obviously, in great detail. Inter really had to fight hard, and they came out afterwards and said there are no such thing as easy matches in Serie A, which, Gazzetta duly responded to with, of course, we know that, yeah. But apparently all of Juventus should defeat every single game, every single opponent with like a 5-0 victory. Otherwise, the league is just ridiculously bad. Anyway, that's just my little angry note to sometimes the way the media refer to things. But Lazio Atalanta. We know Atalanta had come into this match with basically 10 absences. And everyone thought for sure this could be Lazio's opportunity to really try to score a goal, secure an important win. They have been good in the big matches. Not all of them, let's say, but, some. And this was a great time to face Atalanta when they are not at the best. I mean, when you look at some of the absences here, I actually want to read some of the names. I mean, these are absences not just from COVID, but also just injuries, everything. Atabor, Gosens, Darun, Koop Miners, Ilicic, Malinovsky, Pasalic, Zapata, and Muriel. I mean, and then you have to include Toloi and Maele, who had just come back from and allowed to play. And then obviously they had to bring in Piccoli, who was forced to start. And then 2 absolute debuts for Deni Porti and Sidibe. And then they had Scalvini in midfield. And then Lazio came out of Sarri afterwards and said, well, we also had our absences and Atalanta had all their best defenders. So this is why we were not capable of actually winning this match. So here are all our alibis. Do you agree with that? Or Lazio should have taken this opportunity?
Well, I think it's a great result for Atalanta to go away to Lazio with a fraction of a team and get a draw, and a testament to not just Gasperini's squad building, which I think is always admirable, and we talk about it all the time, but his ability to adapt, because they did play more cautiously. They didn't play all out as we sort of love to see them play. They played in a more sort of measured way, and they got a result, which I think is a bit of a miracle in the circumstances, honestly. No, I think it's not a great result for Lazio. I think Lazio have been a frustrating, perplexing team all through this season. I'm certain that should Immobile would have prepared to play against the sort of makeshift defence that Atalanta have had at times this season. It's true that they had something closer to their first choice defence here, but this is, I think, again, just a testament to the resourcefulness of Atalanta that they could keep getting results while really decimating. I mean, this is the sort of game where you think about the sort of discussions we were having earlier in the season 2 weeks ago, basically, about COVID interruptions and about teams sort of ending up getting told to stay put because of their local health authority and really small numbers of absentees. And suddenly you get this team which is pushing the boundaries of the old sort of original UEFA regulation of can you get 13 players and a goalkeeper? But they did it, and they came up and got a point. And I think a point that only looks even better now, knowing that Juventus drew with Milan as well.
You know, what's interesting is that we all talk about, these congested fixture lists and there was like lots of talk in the Premier League about Arsenal delaying the game against Spurs and, obviously all of the absences in Italy that delayed some of the matches, such as Bologna against Inter. But you know what I love about Atalanta, which is what you just said, is that they do what they're supposed to do when there's a lot of games, is that they try their youngsters and they give them a chance and they try to see if they can play ball and what they can do. And we actually get to be introduced to new talent and look at this new talent like Scalvini, who is a defender, but playing in a midfielder. And Gasperini said, well, he's tall, so I think he can win the aerial battle with Milinkovic-Savic. And I think it's just nice that Atalanta do what it's supposed to do when you have so many games and you don't have enough of, this beautiful squad that we can all invest in and have. Not every team can be an Inter or Juventus or whatever it is, But he does what you're supposed to do, which is give youth a chance, give them an opportunity to shine. And maybe you might come up and find yourself a talent that can be used going forward. But what I loved more than anything is afterwards when he said that defenders play as attackers and attackers play as defenders in training. And I thought, how much fun is that? Like, I would love to train under Gasperini. And he said Demiral got past and dribbled past 3 players to score a goal. And I just thought, God, this guy just makes you enjoy football. And for that, Atalanta deserve a top 4. But obviously, I'd rather Juventus get that important place in the top 4 position. But they're just a team to believe in. And Lazio, I think, I'm sorry, but you should have won this match. And you complain about every time you play, a game midweek or whatever it is. Once again, he said, oh, well, we played for 120 minutes. It's against Udinese. Come on, dude, Like, it's just, you didn't play the Super Coppa. Anyway, I'm just not going to complain anymore about that. But it is disappointing. Sempre solo la mia Roma. Lo sai perché? Tutta la mia vita è giallo-rossa. C'è una ragione. Ho la Roma in fondo al cuore. Roma managed to thrash Empoli. Should we be surprised? Because, tactically, this was a game in which Empoli hate the type of team that Roma are. They always get defeated by that type of team. And they were playing at home, and we know they're a bit rubbish at home.
Look, Empoli are no pushovers. We've talked about them before. They're a team that's got something about them at the moment. I think there's a few teams, aren't there, that play these 120 minutes in midweek, and they're one of them. And they were playing it against Inter. So I think you can sort of feel that sort of extra little bit of strain that goes in when you're that close to beating the team that's top of the league, perhaps takes that little bit extra out of your legs. But it's still a good result for Roma. It's still encouraging for Roma that Sergio Oliveira has come in and has been an instant impact player, really impressive 2 performances from him. Perhaps he was something that they were missing and the leader that Mourinho wanted. And I think you've got to be encouraged as Mourinho that this player you've wanted has come in and integrated as seamlessly as that and has contributed in the way that you wanted to so quickly. On top of which, Tammy Abraham, after sort of having a slightly frustrating middle period, he arrived, he did well, and he had a slightly frustrating middle period where it felt like the ball wouldn't go in for him. He's absolutely flying again. And he's, I think, now the first English player since David Platt in the early 90s, I think 92, to reach double figures in Serie A. So he is, whatever else is going on at Roma, I think Tammy Abraham's form and progression is clear and is sort of really great to see, actually. Again, every time, of course, as someone who is half Italian, half English, every time an English player makes that brave choice, not just to hang around and be a reserve on a Premier League club, but to do it anywhere else, frankly. But of course, a little bit extra for me with Italy. And they go out there and they make a success of it. I think it's always exciting. And I think Tammy right now is really taking more and more strides every week.
Yeah, I thought it was a terrific performance from Roma in the sense that it's weird because I had written this because sometimes we place bets and for Bet US. And I said that I thought Roma would smash Empoli just from a pure tactical point of view. This was always going to be a tough match for Empoli. But it is strange with their form recently because they've stopped winning since mid-December. I mean, they haven't won a game in their last 7 matches, 3 draws and 4 defeats for a team that we had said was doing so well and were really flying. But I just find it strange how away from home Empoli have lost only 3 times and at home they've lost 8 times. Really rather ridiculous, but we have to talk about Lorenzo Insigne because he's equaled Maradona's goal-scoring record at Napoli. Done so by scoring the penalty against Salernitana in their 4-1 win. Impressive from Napoli, considering all of January they've had so many absences. They've dealt with the African Cup of Nations, obviously suspensions and injuries with Osimhen, and yet they have managed to collect 10 points and second place. Do you think they can still challenge for the title?
They're back on a 12 with Milan in that conversation, and in a sense, they sort of would need Milan to do what Milan need to do, which is take some point. They need Milan to take some points off Inter in the derby, which is the first game back for Milan and Inter after the international pause. So they need slips from Inter. Everyone now needs slips from Inter. Inter have a 4-point cushion and a game in hand, which is pretty chunky now that we're sort of moving into the second half of the season. But I think we've sort of said it all along with Napoli and Milan that they were going to have this slightly sort of less comfortable middle bit of the season when you've got some players, the Africa Cup of Nations, when perhaps some of the sort of less depth in your squad has been highlighted as well. But I don't think they're out of the title picture. I don't. I think it's Inter's to lose, but I don't think it's Inter's in the bag yet. I think Inter still have to go and earn it, and Napoli are good enough to hang around a while longer.
I do want to give a special mention to Insigne because he really is somebody who just loves Napoli as a club and Naples as a city.
So much he's leaving them.
Well, he doesn't want to. And he's saying that if he scores enough goals, then maybe he gets to stay on. And otherwise, hopefully, Aurelio Di Laurentiis can sign his unborn son and then he has a reason to stay in the city. Which I think was so sweet, but just his overall game and everything he gives to that club, it would be so disappointing to watch. Who did I say, Insigne or Mertens?
You said Insigne.
Oh, I was talking about Dries Mertens.
Did you mean to say Mertens? I was wondering.
Yes. Oh, that's why you were saying he's leaving. Sorry. And I'm
yes.
like, right. I would never share.
Do you want to redo it?
Thought. No, I don't. Because you know that I would never share all these moments about Insigne. He doesn't love Napoli this much. Come on, he's leaving.
I was thinking, this is Mina saying such nice things about Insigne. It's so far out of character. I don't know what.
It really is.
I don't know what to believe.
That's just never going to happen. I'm never going to talk about them in that way, you know.
This is like that moment in the movie when, like, I realised that the body snatchers have got you, Mina. I know it's happened because either you're saying that you love Insigne or you're saying the Juventus should definitely give Dybala that new contract. Those are my two clues. Those are the ways that I'll find out.
Oh my God. So like, let's just say that I'm being trapped or I have a secret twin who's just evil. Yeah. And you're trying to, I don't know if I'm the evil one, but anyway, and you have to figure out which one is Mina. Yeah. Then now you know.
That's it. That's the answer. Check what she says about Dybala and Insigne and you'll have a good idea.
Yeah, no, I would never talk about Insigne that way. Mertens, all Dries Mertens. He's the one with the unborn son. He's the one that loves Napoli and Naples. It's Mertens, and I hope Mertens stays. Do you see why I mean, him and Dybala? And then they said they're talking about how much they love their clubs. One of them is willing to leave. The other's getting an attitude problem if he can't get 10 million. I'm like, look at Dries Mertens, look at Tonali. These are guys who love their clubs. You don't. So that's it. Okay, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. But before I do, Nicky, Nicky has been trying to tell me for the longest time that it's just not going to happen. Vlahovic is not going to go to Juventus. But he might just be going to Juventus.
I don't know anymore, Mina. I don't know anymore.
What do you think? What does your gut tell you here? Because it is a Juve versus Arsenal.
I am fascinated by the developments in the last few days. It seems like Vlahovic, who's been stalling on Arsenal. And look, any Arsenal fan is very used to being disappointed in transfer dealings that drag on like this. There's been summers when Arsenal were linked with Karim Benzema and it was supposed to happen, or I can't remember if it was a summer or a January anymore, or window, and then at the end it didn't happen. It's a very familiar feeling for Arsenal fans to let someone string us along and then their true heart's desire comes out. But what's funny, Mina, is I think before this sort of transfer window, a few months before, if you'd been asking me, I would have said that I thought Juventus is where he's going to end up. I think it's been the place that a lot of us felt that he wanted to end up from what we've heard out of his camp. And I think this sort of offer from Juventus, if there really is an offer from Juventus, because that's what's being speculated. And of course, Fiorentina have been quite clear that they haven't had an offer from anyone. They keep saying, nobody's come to us. You're all talking with the player and his agent. No one's actually showed up at our door yet and given us the sort of concrete offer that we will need before he can leave. I think I've gone from being quite skeptical a few weeks ago that he would leave in this transfer window to now thinking, on balance, more likely than not that he will leave in this transfer window, which is really not that much time left to do it. Yes, the reason is that I think that Fiorentina want to get it done. That's the difference. I think that if Fiorentina didn't want to get it done, it wouldn't happen, because I don't think he's pushing for it. I think his original thought was to stay there until the end of the season. And it just feels like there's been a shift in the attitude at Fiorentina that perhaps they feel like they just want to resolve this now, make the slightly higher amount of money that you might make now than in the summer. And I feel like this sort of most recent, him not being involved in the squad this weekend. I know officially the line was, there's been some coronavirus cases in the squad, but to me, it just seems very convenient. And I feel like it's setting up for the club to make that move. Having said that, it is the club that Vlahovic wants going to make the offer that the club wants this January, because Arsenal, I think, are the easiest option for the club. I think that Arsenal will probably meet what Fiorentina want. I think financially they would meet what Vlahovic wants. But if the player wants Juventus and is willing to dig his heels in for Juventus, then everything gets a lot more complicated. It gets more complicated because that will make him very unpopular in Florence if he hangs around for another 6 months. But it also gets more complicated for Fiorentina, because if Fiorentina have a player who's saying, no, I'm not going to go to Arsenal, well, you can't make him go. And so the leverage gets taken away from them a bit in that situation. And then are they willing to sell to Juventus at a negotiated price? Are they going to dig their heels in and say, no, you've got to pay us this amount? I feel like there was perhaps a point earlier in the season when part of the calculation for Fiorentina was, well, if we keep Vlahovic till the end of the season, he's more likely to
get us in there,
get us into Europe, maybe even the Champions League, get more revenue that way. Whereas that's slipped away a little bit in the last few weeks. There's just a lot of things that are being weighed up, I think, on all sides. But I've said to you, since we did Sky Sports in the UK a week ago, to me, to me, and everyone can have their own opinion, but that hands up celebration that he did after scoring a week ago, that to me looked like preparing himself not to be there again. And so I think at least in the player's head, he's ready to go. Whether or not it will happen, that depends on some other moving pieces. But if you're asking me to call it one way or the other, I think it's more likely that he does go. That's not saying it's 100%. It's just saying I think it's the more likely on the balance of probabilities.
So here's the thing. I don't know. I don't know whether I doubt the move to Juventus, because sadly I am a Juventus fan, and there is a potential in me to always be a bit downhearted in that. You know, you get scared of thinking, could this really happen when it's a player you want? And I don't know whether that's actually affecting my overall professional point of view of will he leave right now, you know? I think also Fiorentina are so desperate for there to be, you know, like a Manchester City that will come on board, and maybe Vlahovic might be tempted to go to that, you know? But I think the problem that we have is not just what Vlahovic wants, but it's also what the agents want. The agents have so much say and so much sway over his final decision, and they can seemingly persuade him to do, or at least they have a relationship strong enough where they can discuss. And we know that his entourage and his agents are on great terms with Cherubini, who's been in contact with them for so many, many years. I mean, we're talking about from Partizan, you know, like a long time ago, Ristich and co. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were happy to talk to him. I know now that they've agreed personal terms. It's about whether or not Fiorentina and Juventus as two clubs, whether a genuine offer and professional offer has been made to Fiorentina. And as far as we know, that hasn't been made. We know the player himself believes in himself and his ability to drive Juventus into the top four and guarantee the top four position. He believes in himself that he is good enough to do that. Whether or not this will happen, like I tell you, there is a part of me that's just not that sure. But if the entourage is on board, Juventus want 60 million. They don't necessarily want to offer more than that, but they can go to 70 million, which means they won't afford anything in the summer market. But it is a punt they're willing to take because they think he's worth it. But they are going to try to go with 60 because they know the agents are not talking to Fiorentina. They know Vlahovic wants to come, so they have that upper hand. They'd like to offer 6 million in wages. The most they will go to is 7. They don't want to give more than that. They're very careful about these things from now on. So that will be interesting to see whether or not it really does happen. But it seems like those are the two genuine offers that Fiorentina have to deal with. They've obviously brought players in from Piontek to Ikone to try to make up for it, but you can't really make up for Dusan Vlahovic. And so, yeah, I guess it remains to be seen what will happen. And obviously, as a Juventus fan, I really do think he can make the difference. I'm still wondering whether Dybala will be back there trying to get him the ball, but at least there's a reference point. So will be fun to watch. But I think that's all we have time for, guys, this week. So we're going to sign off here. Hope you enjoyed it. Next week we have international break, and we shall be discussing all things Italy, including Balotelli. I mean, what is going on there? But we will be back on Friday with Chronicles Q&A mailbag show. Check out our new website, woohoo, at SerieAchronicles.com and click the link to join our Patreon and become a Chronicles Tifoso. Get access to exclusive podcasts and bonus content. Please get your questions in on Twitter because we love our mailbag show at SerieAchronPod with the hashtag Chronicles Q&A, or email us and send a voice message via our website. Ooh, now there's that ability to hear your voice. We're going to give priority to our Chronicles Tifosi members for Q&A questions. Find us on Twitter at Nikki Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and subscribe to the Serie A Chronicles YouTube channel for clips of the show. Leave us a rating and a review, all positive, please. We don't deal with negative very well. We have mental health stuff on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. But please do continue to tune in, and we hope you continue to enjoy our show. Thank you all so much. Over and out. Here for you next week. Ciao. I don't want to read negative stuff.
Stiamo Cassano, palla sotto, ancora Cassano, il sinistro, gol! Al 20° Balotelli, Mario Balotelli porta in vantaggio l'Italia. Incredibile come si è alzato Mario Balotelli, ma splendido l'assist con il sinistro di Antonio Cassano. Una coppia che c'è, una coppia che funziona. Cassano Balotelli.
La dinamica di Cassano fondamentale in questi primi minuti, cerca pochissimo la profondità, sta sempre dalle linee, lascia Balotelli in mezzo ai due avversari, però qui veramente una magia. Vuole servire Chiellini, non lo vede.
Bello per Balotelli,
è buona.
È buonissimo Mario Balotelli, palla sul destra, incrocio dei pali, incrocio dei pali, 2-0, guardate, sembra una statua, 2-0, al 36esimo, esplode il tifo azzurro qui allo stadio di Varsavia. Mario Balotelli, ancora lui, di ghiaccio, Joachim Löw.
Lo sapevamo, ci abbassiamo, abbiamo la palla profonda tra i due difensori centrali e Boateng qui sulla destra, ecco qui, posizione regolare. Posizione
Cassano, poi Montolivo e Balotelli, protagonista assoluto, il re di questa partita. Finisce qui, chi lo avrebbe mai detto? Italia in finale.
Questa serata cambia la carriera di Mario Balotelli.
La carriera di Mario Balotelli è appena iniziata.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.